Welcome to Homemaker Chic Podcast, where we are rescuing the art of homemaking from the daily grind. Today, we're going to be grinding in the garden, hopefully, figuratively, through conversation. This is a long-form conversation podcast. We talk about homemaking, we talk about giving it dignity, and this season, we're specifically talking about creating margin, just staying ahead so we're not right up against the 8 ball, and we're calling that minding the gap. How are you minding today?
I've mined better, if I'm going to be honest with you.
I've mound better.
I've mounded better.
Right. Minded. I've minded better. Mm-hmm. We have kids. We can say minded.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Listen, I am living the perfect example right now of these things. A lot of what we talk about even on the podcast, they're not just straight application. Go, here's a new way to fold your sheets. They're bigger than that.
Right. They're theories.
They're theories. And theories don't always apply. They don't always work out in the flesh exactly like we'd like them to. So
theories are nuanced.
Maybe even you've been maybe even you've been tracking along with us this season and you're like in a ditch. And that's okay. That's okay. We're still just here with you, hanging out for an hour and a half. So take heart, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
I was just telling Angela right before we started recording that you do things the best you can, whether that's menu planning, setting a family calendar, setting your intentions for the day, priorities, coming up with a system for this or that.
Mm-hmm.
And life just has this way of just being. Things happen, things change, they shift, people have different needs at different times. Mm-hmm. And I think even more so as a homemaker than learning exactly how to do this or that a certain way, to me, the wisdom is coming in letting things be what they are, or maybe even accepting the way that are,
mm-hmm.
and being willing to go with that.
Yeah.
In the best I can in that situation, not trying to change the situation always. That
right.
makes sense.
It's always fun to learn how to fold the fitted sheet, but it's more important to be able to get through your day without losing it. And like our daily plan, I mean, if you picture it like, I don't know, some rock or some structure and you pour water it over the top, you know, the water like finds crevices and finds cracks. And like, that's what life does. It's like, oh no, I'm going to get in there and push you a little bit, you know? And so sometimes instead of pushing back, just going with the flow.
Yeah.
Good.
So I did a YouTube video a few weeks ago on letting go of Miss Perfect. Miss Perfect likes things a certain way. Mm-hmm. We talked about this last week. She knows she's capable. She can have deep thoughts, solve problems, be creative, make beautiful things. And she has to die. She
Apparently,
has to die to herself.
I got my gene mutation tests back. Apparently, I have the gene mutation that fans the flames of Miss Perfect.
Miss Perfect likes to control things because she can't control things.
Yeah, remember a few weeks ago when I questioned, you know, as we're learning about that whole gene thing, if they're going to start to connect it to like the personalities they've assigned people. Sure enough, in my test paperwork, it said people with this gene mutation are usually type A. Their closet is organized. They have to have things in order. It specifically said, if they work from home, they have a hard time working unless everything else is in order. I'm like, yeah, you're freaking me out. All I did was swap the inside of my cheek. You're telling me about my closet. Yeah. So,
yeah, I want to come back to this.
Okay.
I'm going to finish my thought real fast. This video, I quote Proverbs 14:4, which is like, where there's no oxen, there's no mess, basically, but strength comes with the ox. And in meditating on this video and what I wanted to say during it, actually made me think, do I want to be strong? Do I want the strength that comes with the ox more than I want the cleanliness of not having, you know, to muck the stall, as it were, right? Mm-hmm. Like, these are things we actually have to face. You actually have to be willing to answer that question and truthfully, right? So, okay, I want to hear about this because I texted you. Tell me more. Tell me more.
You know,
So you, like 1/3 of the population, have the MTHFR gene mutation.
I have 3 out of the 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also had 3 out of the 5, but that wasn't one of them. I didn't have that one.
Okay. So mine was the MTHFR, the MTRR, and the COMT, which I
Mhm.
was listening to his podcast yesterday, Ultimate Human Podcast. And I had scrolled down and I was listening to one about menopause, which is probably really timely because a few times I've wondered, have I had a hot flash? Was that a hot flash or too much salsa? You know, like honest to God, Shay, last night I woke up like it was like someone had took me, taken me, dunked me in a
That took
pool,
it me.
and dunketed me in a pool and laid me back in my bed. I I had to
Wow.
peel my pajamas off. I was like almost gagging. It was so gross. Joel goes, "What's wrong?" And I just took his hand and ran it under my boob. He's like, "Oh."
Oh gosh.
I was
Maybe you were just
like,
sleeping a really deep sleep. I don't know.
no, I
don't
mean,
know.
holy cow.
No.
That was a night sweat. That was it, girlfriend. That
All
one's going
right.
down
Are
in the
night sweats part of
books.
menopause?
Perimenopause. Yeah. Yeah.
Menopause. So
So
many beautiful things.
all that to say is when you like the COMT gene is or gene mutation, whatever, is super related to like estrogen dominance. And they were talking about how to navigate the waters of perimenopause and menopause healthfully, which is super intriguing to
Mhm.
me. I'm resigned to not survive like the next few years. I'm gonna figure it out. So there's a lot of
What kind
humility
of
there,
things did
but
they talk about?
they
What did
talked
they
about,
talk about, like in terms of navigating that?
yeah, well, they were talking about diet, obviously, which most of I'm lockstep with. They talked about obviously having your hormones tested and kind of mentally setting aside, we're not just talking about estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone, like your thyroid, and all those are part of that. Um, and I've had like postpartum hypothyroid issues before. And so every time I get my thyroid tested and I do like the full gauntlet, it shows fine. But I'm just gonna keep an eye on it. I think in a month or two I'll get my hormones checked. It's been a few years and they were talking
Mhm.
about a supplement, DH, uh, DH something that's
DH
supposed,
Cairo?
I don't remember.
D
It's supposed to be
Cairo?
really good. I didn't finish it because I got done making
Okay.
dinner and then had to serve dinner. But yeah,
Yeah.
very, very interesting. I,
People are going to ask us because we've been talking about this recently, this
mhm.
gene mutation test that both Angela and I did. And I don't know there's not like a specific name for it. It's not like you just go and say, I want a blood panel or test my cholesterol. I think you can just call it the gene mutation select like cheek swab test. Or I think a lot of people actually call it the MTHFR test.
Yeah, they do. And
But if you
then,
say that's what I want, yeah.
yeah. And then when you get in there and you order it or whatever, you want to make sure they're testing for all 5 of them. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah.
So it's interesting stuff.
It's really interesting. And it's like, what is the new term? Is it biohacking? Like, what is the term for this approach to your health? Because
I'm not sure.
I think it's called biohacking. It's really intriguing to me. So much so that, like when you say when you were exposed to Calvin, you were upset. You were like, why? How dare I not had been taught this, right? I feel
Mhm.
like that, and this my analogy or my connection is like, I feel like that with this. Like, if this is
Mhm.
really as important as if just supplementing to fill in the gaps, the nutritional gaps that these gene mutations cost, if it's really that important, how dare no one tell me about this over the last like I'm not kidding, 8 years of everything I've been struggling with Epstein-Barr and MS symptoms and all this crazy crap, losing my hearing overnight. Like, how dare no one like run this too, you know? I don't know.
Yeah,
It
it seems
frustrates
if the
me.
technology is there, like this should be step one.
Step one.
Because what happens so often is you go to the doctor, you give them your symptoms, they give you a supplement or a medication. Something like the MTHFR, I know enough to know what that means is that your body can't take in folic acid, period. So all those prenatals that you were taking for the 6 times you were pregnant, right?
Mhm.
Basically, every multivitamin has folic acid in it. Your body actually can't take it in unless it's methylated. It won't, it literally will not absorb any of it.
But it
So
gets
it
backed
seems like
up
before they give
then.
you a supplement,
Yeah.
they would say, can she process this? Is this going to actually put us more towards the goal line?
Yeah. And it's not just that you can't take it in, you can't process. Like it gets clogged up.
Yeah, it gets clogged up.
Yeah.
It gets clogged up.
Yeah. So I just kind of think like,
So,
you know, I went through so much, like I had to ask for a Lyme's disease test. And
yeah.
that was negative. And then I got my thyroid check. That was fine. And then, you know, finally it was a friend that said, I think you have Epstein-Barr. Like all those doctors. And when I lost my hearing, you know, and went through all the nasty shots and everything to try to get it back, the doctor said, I'm like, I want to know why this happened to me. He goes, it could have been a virus. I'm like, what virus? It turns out
Mhm.
Epstein-Barr, you know, like, but
Mhm.
he didn't say anything. He didn't know. Yeah.
Mhm.
Anyways, so I just got
Yeah.
it.
Look,
I
y'all,
just
you
got
have
the
to be your own
results.
advocate.
You
Okay?
do.
Be your
Yeah.
own advocate. And
Please.
if you can't do it, then have somebody that you love and trust and say, I need you to be my advocate for me.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. We should do like a
Yeah.
whole show on that at some point. Because
Yeah.
now that we've said it again, we're going to get more questions, everybody.
Yeah.
But definitely Google it, do some research. Very, very
Mhm.
interesting stuff. But that's not what I want
Mhm.
to talk about today.
Okay.
I don't want to talk about that today.
Before we dive into what we do want to talk about, which is minding the gap in the garden,
Yay.
outside, springtime stuff, lovely stuff. Let's give a shout out to Branch Basics for sponsoring season 19 of Homemaker Chic. So let me give you the nitty gritty on how this works, okay? Branch Basics essentially formulated the most incredible, clean, multi-purpose concentrate. And when you order from Branch Basics, you get a big old bottle of this cleaning concentrate. And with it, multiple spray bottles, either glass or plastic, depending on what you'd like, that you fill mostly with water. And then you will add a designated amount of this concentrate to each bottle. And then you can literally clean anything in your house. I've even said I use the concentrate to clean my dishes. You can clean your dishes, your windows, your mirrors. You can mop your floors with it, clean your bathrooms, scrub your toilets, everything from this one cleaning concentrate that has no nasty chemicals, no artificial fragrances, no synthetic cleaners that are going to be harmful in any way. You can look it up on one of your little, you know, those apps where you can scan
Mm-hmm.
products and it'll show you how toxic it is. Go look Branch Basics up on one of those if you
Yeah.
have it. It's incredibly clean. And offering Maker Chic listeners 15% off if you go to links.branchbasics.com/homemaker chic. You can get 15% off. So try it. You are going to buy and or make cleaners regardless.
Yeah.
So just
And
try it.
get the glass bottles because they're fun. You get a great discount. And no joke, this concentrate lasts like 2 to 4 months. So we're talking about being able to make just multiple cleaning products. And
Yep.
yeah, I love it. I just detailed my espresso machine before the show. You know, they get all like, well, here they get minerally. And then there are people that don't properly clean off the milk thingy. Can't. The steamer. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also, this is what I use for laundry. The cleaning concentrate can also be used to use in your washing machine to clean your laundry. So when we say it's multi-purpose, it's really multi-purposed.
Yeah.
So instead of being fearful that you're going to run out of 64 different products for this or
Right.
that, you can just think about one. And that, ladies, creates clarity and creates some
Margin.
space in your brain for minding the gap, some of
Right.
that beautiful margin we've been talking about. So links.branchbasics.com/homemaker chic, or head to Instagram. We're on there at homemaker chic, and you can just click the little clean button. It'll take you right there. Super easy. So you don't have to remember that link. But thank you to Branch Basics for sponsoring this season.
Sweet. All right. So I was sort of in the garden. We got a lot of snow. Did I see on Instagram you got snow?
We got snow too.
We got a lot. Well, not a lot overnight, but everything was just like bright. The sun came out, and yeah, which is good because I am trying to pick a paint color, and it's been pretty abysmal out. Just pleasant, but cloudy. And so now I can actually like see the color in the sunshine, which is fantastic. But I was in the garden today, as you can see. I'm starting my seeds finally, and there's actually dirt under my fingernails. It's so wonderful. So I almost got down and like snorted it. Just smelled, even just the seed starter mix just smelled so good. Oh, so good.
Yes. Yeah.
So obviously this is a place we want to create margin, because there's
oh my gosh. I was just going to say, I can't think of any place.
Aside from not knowing what's for dinner, I mean, yeah.
The garden it is a complex organism because it will give you the highest highs of confidence. Look what I have done. Right? It's like in Castaway when Tom Hanks finally gets the fire going and he pounds his chest. I have made fire.
Yeah.
That's how I feel when I get the garden locked in. I'm like, oh my word, look what I did.
Yeah.
The same time, there is nothing that makes you loathe yourself quite like the garden when you don't get it right.
Yeah.
You just, who am I? I don't deserve to have anything. Who do I think I am?
Right. You're reflecting on all the money you've spent, and
it can be brutal. It can be really brutal.
It's nasty. So we want to like be proactive. We want to reduce stress. We want to actually make sure that we have created time to enjoy it. And I know like the act of gardening is so enjoyable. But I mean, like, go out and paint it, go out and read a book in it, go out and take a nap in it. Like, not just have it be another thing on your checklist, even if it's fun, like actually being in the space without laboring, I think is good for you. Imagine.
Lest this makes me sound like a drunkard. I love at the end of the day, like that little bit of time right before you start cooking dinner. Where the deep heat of the day has passed. I have a bench in my market garden, and I will often sit up there with a glass of wine and just stare. Oh, excuse me.
Bless you.
I will often sit up there with a glass of wine in the shade, and just, my favorite part is watching the birds and the bugs.
Yeah.
Watching a hummingbird come to a sunflower, or watching the birds pick the seeds off the zinnias. These like little beautiful pieces that you do not see when you're laboring. That.
Yeah. Do you get dragonflies because of your pond?
We get so many dragonflies.
We call them bombardiers. They're so amazing. They're like the size of my middle finger, and they're just hundreds. I love them.
Yep. And frogs. So where I'm sitting right now, for those of you watching the video of the podcast, these doors right behind me, these French doors, they go out to a little patio, and then 2 steps away from that patio is our pond that we built. And I always wish it was a little nicer. It'll get there eventually. All things take time.
Yeah.
But the frog song in the spring and early summer is off the charts. And sometimes it drives my kids crazy when they're trying to sleep, but I open the door. I'm like,
love it.
Saturate me in the frog song. I love it. I love the way they sing with each other. You'll hear them go back and forth rhythmically, and then one will stop. pleasurable.
Mm.
And I think that's where I want to start. It's like, yes, we don't want to be stressed. Yes, we want to make sure we bite off what we can chew. Yes, we want to make sure we enjoy it. But
Mhm.
look, if you're listening to this and you think, what do I care about this episode? I don't garden. Oh my gosh, garden, garden. I don't care who you are, or if you live in an apartment or you live in the country or the city or whatever, finding a way to be nature, finding a way
Mhm.
to be around it, to understand it, to deepen your respect for it. I just think there's very few things you could do that will build you up that much as a human.
Mhm. Yeah.
To understand the incredible resilience and at the same time the fragility of nature and of its cycles and how each piece is important, you know?
Mhm. Junior and I just watched this YouTube video a few weeks ago. I don't know what channel it was. It was just recommended or something. And this guy built a nature pond or like a habitat pond or something like that. He had like a little tiny one that he had done before, and then he dug this big one and put like a floater out in the middle with plants on it and put little bird houses, set them up, and then he built a blind like right next to it where he could go with his camera and just stand and observe even. It was incredible. He had such,
Yeah.
remember in My Side of the Mountain when the boy has such an intimate knowledge of all the animals and their routines and everything?
Mhm.
That's how this guy was. He knew the pairs of birds. He knew their like habits and just from going every day and observing. It was excellent. It was so
Yeah.
great to see someone first of all be so methodical and so disciplined. Like this was a huge project. He tilled all the way around it and put down wildflowers. It was a big deal. And then that he lives a quiet enough life that that is valuable to him to just go sit and
Mhm.
watch.
Mhm.
I loved it.
It's beautiful.
Mhm.
I was just rewatching an old episode of Gardener's World. If you don't yet watch Gardener's World, get your BritBox subscription on Amazon and
Right?
watch every episode. But Monty talks about how there's nothing greater that you can do for wildlife in your garden than to put in any sort of natural water source, from big ones to even really small little ponds. I mean,
Mhm.
look, if we're listening to this and people are in an apartment, like literally putting a teeny tiny little
Bird
container
bath or
pond on
yeah.
your patio, bird
Mhm.
bath, anything, what it will do, what it will do to the ecosystem in your area is incredible. And he also talks about always making sure to keep pieces of wood floating, at least have a few
Yeah.
pieces of wood,
Rotten. Yeah.
because that's what frogs like to put their eggs on. And
Mhm.
I remember the first year we put our pond in, putting a piece of wood in, flipping it over, and just seeing it laden with frog eggs. And I was like, he was right. Of course he was right. He's Monty Don.
Mhm.
But it was just so beautiful to be, yeah, to just to be a part of it and in a unique way. And ours is the same way. We have wild mallard ducks that come back to the pond every year. It's a male and female.
Mm.
And every year they come and they spend a few weeks here and then they go on. We have a pheasant, male pheasant, that comes
Ooh,
every
cool.
year. I mean, just really, really neat things. So, yes, two ponds. I mean,
That's
that's a great
nice.
place to start as a garden because simple, simple.
Yeah.
Water's fairly simple. So, but I've been talking to my cooking community a lot about gardens this year. A lot of us are gardeners,
Mhm.
and a lot of us garden not for flowers, but for food,
Right.
right? We're growing vegetables. So we're all going to have kind of our different goals. In a lot of ways, I love to grow vegetables. I love to grow vegetables. But I've told myself, you need to get your vegetables to a point where you have space, you have margin for your
Mhm.
flower beds,
Yeah.
because flowers,
Because flowers.
beauties.
Are you growing any new flowers this year?
You
Or
know, I
anything that you've
am,
never tried or
no,
anything like that? Okay.
nope. this year I'm really trying to stick to basics. And you know, when you've been in your spot for a while and you take a step back and you're like, what does well here? Like, what don't I have to try so hard at? And there's a lot of really beautiful flowers that grow very well here that I don't have to try at. Roses, for example.
Mhm.
I do nothing to my roses. I don't
I know. I
fertilize
hate
them.
you. You don't have to kill Japanese beetles. Yeah.
I don't spray them. I don't do anything but prune them. And even when I prune them, I literally just like lop off a third of it a couple times a year. Like I don't even think about them.
Mm.
And they're beautiful. They do really well. And then there's a lot of like self-seeding flowers that I really love and that I've sort of just had to say at this stage of life for me to be able to maintain these, my flowers cannot be high maintenance. They've got to be a little simpler than that. And so I'm kind of looking more towards those flowers and just saying, you know what? Grow, go with God. And then maybe when I'm older and I have a little bit more margin to be able to devote to this, I'll bring in some specialty things that maybe need a bit more care.
Yeah, it's you have to have time to be fussy for sure.
With flowers, very much so.
Mm-hmm.
Like all those beautiful seed packets, and you think, yeah, this is going to be the year that I grow all these things from seed. Flowers have different personalities. They have really different likes and dislikes.
Mm-hmm.
And like I know vegetables like the back of my hand. I know how to plant onion seeds. I know what tomatoes like. I know what their tendencies are. But specialty flowers, I don't know. I don't know that language like that yet. Maybe you do. I don't know.
I am doing I'm hoping to put the window boxes in on the front of the house this year. And where I did not used to like this flower at all. I just kind of thought it was old. I don't know, it just seemed typical. Let me rephrase that. Typical. I didn't used to like them, but I'm in love with geraniums as a grown up.
Oh yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I am going to try to grow my own from seed because I want mass quantities of them this year. So I'm going to try those from seed, and I am going to try dahlia from seed and see what happens. It can't get any worse. It can't get any worse. First of all, I
You mean
can't
then
afford
using your
dahlia.
tubers?
I can't afford them
Oh, no.
anymore. I can't.
Mm-mm.
And I kill them every time I try to store them. And so I'm going to try seed, and then I'll try storing again after that. But here I'm just hopeful. I'm going to start them like this weekend, and they take so long here for me to get the first bloom. I typically even start my tubers indoors. So I'm hoping that like February is early enough. From everything I've read, it says it's going to be okay. So I'm excited, and I'm hopefully going to have tons of them because I love them. I love them.
I sometimes love them.
Sometimes
They're not my favorite, as
your
Julia would
favorite.
say. It's not my favorite. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about dahlias.
I don't
know.
like the big spiky sea urchin looking ones. I like the ones, I suppose
Nope.
they look like a
They're called
hardier
button.
zinnia, you know, like the big dinner
Yep.
plate ones. I'm not like, I don't need anything the size of my head. That's why the Lord made sunflowers. I don't know. Plus they
Yeah.
look so weird in an arrangement unless you're doing something really legit, you know. It's always that big clunky one at the base of the arrangement, you know, it's like.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think I love zinnias the most, and they're so much easier to grow. Like I just throw seed out.
Yeah, mine get
Literally just throw as soon as
mildewy
the
here
soil's
though.
workable.
So yeah,
Oh, okay.
my zinnia and my hollyhocks get like copper or like some sort of
Yeah.
metal and
Rust.
then rust. Thank you. Gosh, I couldn't think of it. Thanks.
Yep.
And then the zinnias do, you know, I have to, if they're one fraction too close to each other or something, they just get all mildewy and yuck. But I love them. I grow them every year. Gonna grow more. But I like dahlias in arrangements. I like how long they last. I like the structure.
Yeah.
I love the purple stems, the ones that have purple. I'm a freak for purple foliage.
Yeah.
Love. So
Yeah. Honestly, like this makes it sound a bit fancy having this conversation. I would be just so happy if I didn't let it go totally in the gutter this year. Like,
I don't know how to do that. I mean, because it's just like anything. Every
Yeah.
year you start with the best intentions and something goes wrong. But I guess like that's what we're talking about on the show this season is knowing that it's going to, and then what are maybe just a couple things that we could do so that there's space when it does. So we can stay in love with it the whole time. Yeah.
Right. So I had a few of my beds that I just broadcast in wildflower seed. And it'll grow, you know, beautiful little annual things, bachelor
Mhm.
buttons and chamomile and California poppies and all kinds of things. But it was just literally me saying, this is what the structure's there. Okay.
Mhm.
We've got a few big pieces. Maybe, let's see, I'm thinking of one garden. It has hops climbing up a telephone pole. It's got a lilac bush and an apple tree and a few roses. And then the rest, it was just, here you go. And good luck.
Mhm.
Because look, this is too much for me to maintain. And
Mhm.
in order for me to have mental margin, I have to want to go out there. And none of us want to do anything. We're so overwhelmed that we're just crippled by the amount of labor it's going to take to get from point A to point B.
Yeah. So when you do that scattering, do you struggle with weeds then in those beds? Like grasses
I
and
know my
stuff?
beds well enough to know which ones what are weeds, you know, like which beds struggle with which weeds. Do you have places like this? I have one garden bed that gets thistles. That's the only
Mm.
spot on the whole property that gets thistles. So I know them well enough to know what to pinch out, but no, not typically.
Not too bad.
Not
Okay.
typically. And look, you just let it grow and you just pull it out when you recognize it's a weed. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not a major thing. I struggle with weeds, period. So it's not like it's the broadcasted seeds fault.
Right. Well, I mean, you're not
It's
broadcasting
my
on like
fault.
wood chips or something. You're broadcasting on probably more
Right.
open dirt. So I just wondered if it was a
Right.
struggle. So
Yeah. All right, ladies, hang on with us for just a second here. We're going to take a quick ad break. Please listen, support our sponsors. They keep Homemaker Chic on the air. We'll be right back. Yeah, so creating margin in the garden, in the flower garden specifically, means trying to do just a little bit less for me.
okay.
Focus on a few things and doing a few things well, and just trying to stay on top of that. And sometimes, you know, we planted, gosh, 20 grapevines, Zinfandel grapevines when we first moved in here, and they're productive and beautiful. But dang it, y'all, they're not in the wrong spot. Turns out, like, as you
Get to know
your
your
property
space.
changes.
And that's one of the first things you guys did. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Stuart came to me, he puts his hands on my shoulders and he said, I'm going to pull those grapevines. And like, it was just, oh no, I love them. I love them. But we did plant about 20 other grapevines last year. So I know there's more coming. And I know it's in the wrong spot. It's made it completely unmanageable. I know he's right, but it hurts. And I say this in case any of you have one of those painful things, those band-aids that you have to rip off to create margin.
Yeah.
Because if I say, no, leave them, that is going to make that piece of our property very difficult for me this growing year. And that's hard.
It is hard. Like the garden does require imputations and calculations.
Yes.
You know, it
Imputations.
does.
Yes.
And they stink. And sometimes it's humbling because it feels like the white flag of surrender. Other times it's very wise, needed to be done. Other times you're doing it for future you, the gardener, because you know that if you take out XYZ, for example, and put in some beautiful flowering tree that 5 years from now, it'll be a new focal point in your garden. You know, there's tough decisions to make out there. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's pieces I've yet to solve. You know, what you see of our property on YouTube or on Instagram.
That's what I want you to see.
That's what I want you to see. That's a good chunk of our property that's developed now. But there's a third of our property that we haven't developed because I'm not sure. And I don't want to put the labor and the cost in until I'm sure, until I'm
Mhm.
sure of what it needs to be.
Mhm.
And I'm getting a better idea of that this year. But look, this is it's tough stuff. And
Yeah.
sometimes not doing something is actually the right answer because
Mhm.
that does create some space.
Mhm.
Creates a little bit of space. Yeah.
This year, I do have something this year that I'm going to do, and I've been looking at it for a couple years now. We have this like half finished bread oven that's just sitting there. It has to get done. It's such an eyesore. Talk about filming over and around something. Oh my gosh, it's awful. It has to get done, but it's right up against my stone wall, and I've been wanting a border for a long time in my garden because I have just too much grass. I want the grass gone. I want gravel, but that's a lot of work. But I'd love to put a border in.
Mm.
And to do that, I think I need to move my stone wall over by like 18 inches.
What?
Yeah.
18 inches.
Yeah. I think that would it. If I build a border right now, I have these steps coming down to my garden and you'll step right into the border.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously stepping stones or what have you, but it would be better if I moved the wall over.
Oy.
But that might be okay
Amputation.
because, yeah, because it's 6 years old now and it's shifted and stones fall, kids climb on it. It's sunk a good 6 inches. So it doesn't even look like as regal or charming, even it looks kind of dumpy. Needs a redo. Um, So, maybe this time I could put,
Mm.
I don't know, gravel underneath and then put the stone. Like maybe I can learn something now that
Yeah.
time has passed. But I feel like I just need to do it. And then, like right now, I don't have anywhere to put divided perennials. I was even considering just putting them in the ground next to my raised beds, like all super charming and everything. They got to go. I need to move stuff around. And that would give me a lot more room if I did that.
Yeah. You know who's the king of this? Monty Don.
Monty.
Recently on his
He is the
Instagram, the picket
amputation
pitch
king.
that he
He's
is.
the
That's what I'm saying.
yeah.
The picket thing that he has, and he just took all that boxwood out.
Well, it was
Just
blight,
gone.
but
It was blight, but I know, but
he
he's
ripped
on
that
to the
band-aid
next.
off. He's like, we're doing it.
Yeah. Rip
That
up a path, put in new beds. Okay, fine. Do it.
I love boxwood. I know you're not a box person. I love
I'm
boxwood so
not.
much. I think I own like four. I tried um starting them or the cuttings and I let them dry out. They were doing so good. I love boxwood. Like if I had $3,000 to spend on boxwood right now, I would without even flinching.
Yep.
And
I
if
like
I had to tear
boxwood.
them
It's
out, like I would sob. I would lose my mind. Yeah.
and he started those all. Those are all
I
his
know.
cuttings. So
I know.
he's
It's
invested
unbelievable.
a long time into them. Yes.
Yeah. Talk about future
I think,
Monty,
we
right?
talk about all the time, like accepting where you are. I have to accept what my house is and what it is not.
Mhm.
Monty lives in a very old but regal British estate. And it's flat and it's bordered and incredible. And
Mhm.
mine is not that. And it will never be that. There is nothing regal or structured about my house.
Mhm.
Like I call it a cottage. That is the best word for it. And so there's certain plants that just don't work here. There's certain things that they don't feel quite at home here. And it is actually very liberating to just say, look, this is what is
Right.
the end. Great.
This works. This doesn't. Yeah.
This works. This doesn't. You know, it works here. Big patches of wildflowers and
Right.
prairie grasses
Well, you
and
also
self-sown
get like
hollyhocks and sunflowers.
blazing. I mean, when you tell me about your summer temperatures, I always envy you in February because you're like, I'm in the garden, and then come July, I'm in my heyday and you're like hiding out in front of the air conditioner in the house,
Mhm.
like, oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, we do not have a temperate climate. It is extreme in both
Mhm.
directions. just so extreme. So it is a tricky time for us.
Mhm.
Like we don't garden during the day. You can garden early morning until the sun comes up or at dusk, but no one's out there gardening midday. It's just not possible.
Mm.
It's 115 degrees,
Oh my
not
gosh.
gonna happen. So yeah, there's even certain things where it's like, that's charming, wouldn't live here.
Right. I
Like
was like, is
things
there
here
even a
have to be
box that
able to
would
hold their
survive
own.
when it's 115?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not. All right, let's move from the flower garden and into the vegetable garden, because I know there's a lot of our listeners who are growing their food. They're growing their vegetables. And this area to me is a lot easier place to create margin. There's really simple ways to create margin in the vegetable garden, starting with only growing what you're going to eat. Just literally knocking some of those varieties off the list.
Yeah. Yeah. Starting with not getting the Baker's seed catalog and its oversaturated photographs, and just be like, I gotta have it. One kind of cantaloupe, I'm going to grow 5.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And some of this is devastating, by the way, lest you think this is easy. I am not going to grow leeks this year. And I'll tell you why. I love leeks. They're so beautiful. I
I'll
love eating
send you
them. I
some.
love making them.
But
You
okay,
sent me some?
no, I will send you
Okay,
some
I'll grow
because,
yours.
okay, tell me why, and then I'll tell you why.
Okay, I'll tell you why. Because out in my market garden right now is a 30-foot row of leeks that is not harvested. So
Like,
what that
seriously,
tells me,
they look so cool, but
I love
there's
them and they're
too
easy to
many of
grow.
them. I still have half of mine in the bed out there all soggy and gross because I'm pulling them out and I'm banging the dirt off and I'm doing all the work, like tug of war. I'm looking down at my pile like, how many bloody leeks are you going to eat this winter? Like, how many
Mhm,
things of stock? Eat a root
mhm,
vegetable. Calm down. Yeah.
mhm. And look, if I want to be like my Miss Perfect self, I'll grow all the cabbages and I'll grow all the leeks. And I've tried to do this and I put them in the cold room, put them in the root cellar. And look, I would be pleased if it was just me. I would be pleased as punch to just eat steamed cabbage with butter all winter long with the leeks, whatever. Cook me a roast, poach me an egg. Okay. But like,
Yeah.
I, I have 4 kids
Right.
and they, it's different. It is different. And that means me having to die to my ideals of
Mhm.
what I think they should always eat and live
Yeah.
in the reality of what is and do the best I can within those things. So this, just because I'm not growing them this year doesn't mean that'll always be the case. But I have to be realistic. So I've also grown 200 heads of cabbage in the past, and I will literally mound this cabbage up in my root cellar. I love cabbage. I could eat it all the time. My family gets a little sick of cabbage.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will literally do all that work, harvest it, put it in the cold room, and then all winter long be taking rotting heads out and throwing them to the cow because no one really wants to eat it
Right.
besides me and Stuart.
Right.
So
Yeah. My kids are like, really, Mom? Sauteed cabbage? Like, it's so good. I
it's
have children
so
that have
good. And
decided they
they'll
don't
even
like
eat it. But
zucchini. Most of my kids don't like
yeah,
zucchini. I like, but
yeah.
what about like garden surprise, scram homesteader surprise? It's like zucchini and eggs and every other vegetable from the garden. Dinner, like when you were
Yeah.
little.
Yeah.
Can't you be easy like when you were
Yeah.
little?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, look, we touched on this briefly, and we touched on this briefly last week about how people do kind of hold you to a standard, especially when you live this public life, and
Oh
it can
yeah,
be
yeah.
really difficult. Even in my video, I showed, what I showed you guys? Wait for it. Store-bought bread, sandwich bread. Okay. And I know what's coming. I
Oh,
know
I
what's
do
coming.
not
I've been
envy
in
you.
this,
Yeah.
I've been in this circus long enough to know what's coming. And it takes a lot more confidence to say, yeah, I teach people how to bake bread for a living. and their store-bought bread in my video. And you know why? Because it's not all about me. It's not all about what I want. And I have
I
to
can
live
sew. I'm
also a
not
real
sewing
life
my
in real
clothes.
time.
Give me a break.
But I mean, the same has to be true for even the way we eat, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, just because you can do these things doesn't mean that that's what's realistic or best or feasible for you in any given season of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, but people don't like that. People have a hard time with that. So, yeah, we buy, you know what? We buy food from Costco in the wintertime a lot of times. We do the best we can, but it's still the reality of it. So, my kids still really they love sandwich bread. They love my bread more, but when they
Mm-hmm.
go to make sandwiches for lunch, that's what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Like,
So I think the idea of, okay, creating margin in the garden, I think the knee jerk, like bootstraps reaction is get up earlier, pull those weeds before they get too big, make sure you have the sprinkler in place and you're not, you know what works before the beginning of the season. I think it's a lot of like works-based gardening. And I think what we've seriously, right? Like if it's meant to be, it's up to me,
yeah.
kind of a thing. But I think if you
Yeah.
were to listen to the last 25 minutes of kind of what we've been saying, it's actually don't do so much. So there's less to do, or so that you actually can pull the weeds. Because it's,
Yeah.
many of us go into the season with an like unbridled enthusiasm and rose-colored glasses. And then when the reality hits, there is no margin. It's not about just getting up at 5 and pulling the weeds before it's 110 out. Like, if you could do that 7 days a week, you would do that 7 days a week. Like, the the gardener's plate is full,
Mhm.
literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we sort of managed that in our family, ironically, by getting up early
Mm-hmm.
on the summer days. But I keep that isolated to the vegetable garden. So I require my family's help, and I require them to help me in the vegetable garden, partly because idle children are no good. You know, a summer kid with nowhere to direct their energy is not that's
Yeah.
not good. They need they need to put their effort towards something. I
Mm-hmm.
also want them to learn how to grow food, what it
Mm-hmm.
looks like, what it tastes like, the processes of it. This is something that I want them to leave my house knowing. Now,
Yeah.
whether or not they choose to apply this at any point of their life, who knows? But I want them to have that foundation, that
Yes.
understanding of here's how we grow these things. But that's kind of where that duty stops. And the things that I do just purely for beauty, for enjoyment, like the flower gardens, those are mine. I don't require them to kind of help me with those things
Mm-hmm.
because those are extra, I suppose, in a way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So I
I mean,
do it like we do in the house where I assign each kid a room. That's your room for the week at the end of the day or midday, like make it look decent. Okay. Um, and so I do that in the garden because my potager is all like square and rectangle raised beds. So I'm like, pick two. You want to go swimming or whatever? Like, here's your white bucket. Those are your beds for the week. Because yeah, not really so much the flowers, like you said, but the
Mm-hmm.
vegetable beds. And ours was the same thing when we sort of started like this kind of homesteading. Oh, we're gonna have chickens. We're gonna know how to butcher a chicken. We're not gonna learn how to do XYZ. It wasn't like in the hopes that we would raise like this brood of homesteaders. I just wanted them to know how. I just wanted that to like
Mm-hmm.
flesh out their kind of well-roundedness. Like, okay, I have an understanding of food. I have an understanding of manual labor. I know how to do this. I know how to get something done. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And I think those are such good things, and it's such an opportunity. It's such an opportunity for the kids. I know they don't see it like that, but I do
Right.
think it is.
Yeah. For sure.
So I think having a schedule, growing the right amount, growing the things you're actually going to make use of,
Mm-hmm.
right? Those are all massive ways. And then, creating some sort of schedule just to keep things between the rails.
Mhm.
There is going to come a point, usually for me, it's August, where the ship has sailed and the
Yeah.
garden is what it is until I
There's
get out there in the fall and do the major thing.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
at some point it flips from managing it, planting, tending, watering, weeding to harvest.
Right, which is
And
huge.
so it's huge. And so you have to, in order to create margin, you have to set your priorities to say, so long as this piece of it is done,
Mhm.
that will be good.
Right. We should
Right.
take a little break,
And so,
say thank you to
okay.
some sponsors, and then finish with talking about the harvest. We need to do wine too.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So the harvest to me, this is the point. This is the point of a lot of what we do. It's
Mm.
not the only thing, but it's a big piece of it. So I know a lot of gardeners who will just freeze stuff
Mhm.
until they want to make it. So whether that's jams, berries or fruit for jams, or even tomatoes for winter tomato sauce. I cannot do this.
Why? That's something I
It
do because
deprives me of
it's
joy.
so,
It
but
deprives me of joy.
it's sometimes it's
I
so
know.
overwhelming and you're just back to back to back to
I know.
back with processing. I really like just being able to say to myself, look, just put the grapes in the freezer for a week or 2 months. And on a rainy day, like when you've come up for air, it sort of takes me off the hook. It gives me margin, because
Mhm.
there's some weeks where you're just doing so much or you're tired or yeah, it's too much, but you don't enjoy that at all. I mean,
I
obviously it's
don't
much
enjoy
more
it at all.
romantic
Maybe
and
I should try
yummy.
again.
Some things, I mean, to even just take half of your tomatoes and go like, I can do this in a few months when things have calmed down. Yeah, it doesn't bother me. It's not as
Ugh,
romantic for
I have things
sure.
about
There's
me.
nothing like bringing it in and like taking off the leaves and photographing it, and it
Yeah.
just feels good. But
Yeah. You know what I did this year finally? I ordered an electric saucer versus a hand cranked saucer, which is what I've always
really,
done.
yeah,
But when you're putting up over 100 quarts of
it's
passata,
yeah,
come on,
that
come on.
sounds fantastic. Hmm.
Yeah, you flip a button and it goes. It's amazing.
Is
So
it
this
is
is
it
one of those
as
like work harder,
messy?
not
Does
smarter
it
things.
like overflow and
Yeah.
get funky or okay?
Yeah, I mean, it's messy.
Yeah,
Saucing anything is going to get messy.
right.
And I think that's part of it. Is like, I leave all the tomatoes on. That's why I grow a certain variety of tomato. So this is how I create some margin with my tomato products,
Okay.
which are the point of my garden is tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
So I grow a San Marzano tomato
Me too.
or a San Marzano type tomato. So
Mm-hmm.
San Marzano are indeterminate. They grow constantly. Determinates are more of your traditional bush tomato. Okay. There's a really great San Marzano style tomato called Paisano that is on a determinate plant. So if you are limited on space, that's a great one to get. But the cool thing about these tomatoes is that they have super thick skin. So they will hold on the plant for days and
Yeah.
days. Unlike heirloom tomatoes, like a Brandywine, has
Mm-hmm.
super thin skin. You have to like get gloves on when you
Yeah.
harvest it so you don't damage it. These are not that way. So I can go out once per week, harvest all the tomatoes that have ripened that week, and then just spend, part of a day on Saturday canning my tomatoes for that week. And you're only doing it for a very limited amount of time in the summertime. But I think maybe creating margin is finding those pieces that bring you pleasure. Like it's
Because then you
work,
you
trust
have
me,
to you have it
but
to look forward to. It's
right.
yeah. It
Yeah.
is
It's
like chamomile harvest is
yeah.
like one of my favorites, and it's tedious and takes forever because I grow so much, but it everything smells like it. My hands smell like it. The room smells like it. Yeah, I love it. And that's
Do
it's
you use a
tedious.
chamomile rake?
I don't. They're really expensive. I'm too cheap to buy one.
Yeah. But
They're
you're talking about
super
time saver.
expensive.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Well, I just
I think they're like $40. They're not
mm-mm.
like crazy. I think so. I'm gonna look it up right now.
Okay. I
Keep
thought they were
going.
like 80 or something. I'm like, I don't really want to spend 80 on a piece of equipment. Yeah, but I
Here's
braid
one on
it.
Amazon for $30.
Okay.
Do you need me to buy you one for your birthday?
The season will be over by then.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm
Could be
looking
a
at
time saver
Johnny's.
though.
They're expensive.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'll just cut, I'll put them, I like to hang them around the kitchen. Like people do hops later in the
Mhm.
year. Like I love to do big swags of braided chamomile and chives and stuff like that. But a lot of times then I'll just take them and put them in a brown paper bag upside down. Just let them dry out that way. Then I can just shake
Mhm.
the bag and yeah.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's little twigs or whatever, but like whatever, you're making tea, big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to find those things where you say, like, here's the 10 things or even the 15 things that are most important to me. Like the things that are most useful or the things that I find the most pleasure in,
Mm-hmm.
and letting the rest sort of, if you get to it, you get to it.
Yeah,
Right.
like
But
the
like, I think if you
leeks.
actually start the year with like intention and saying,
Mm-hmm.
look, these are the things that I want to make sure I have margin for.
Right. It's
I think
not
even
worth it for me to
identifying those things.
it's not worth it for me to grow broccoli. That is dumb. Onions, on the other hand, like that's worth my time. That's worth my investment. I love braiding onions. And then we live in an area where you can't get a good onion to save your life. So as much as it's fun for me to plant other things, it's actually really a waste of my time. Like just go buy a bag of broccoli because that's how much you're going to end up harvesting anyways.
Yeah. Okay. Play a game with me.
Hmm.
5 crops.
Okay.
That's all you get. What are they?
Okay. Beets. I love beets.
Okay.
Onions. Uh, arugula. Gotta have it. Or
Mhm.
just veg crops.
Yep.
Jalapenos. I get one more, right?
Mhm.
Golly, like
These are
what? Like just
hilarious.
for me.
These are funny.
Just for me, not
Yes.
pragmatic, right? Just for me.
Just if I say you only get to grow 5 things in your garden this year, pragmatically for what you're going to feed your family, whatever. What are those
Okay.
5 crops? Beets,
Beets,
jalapenos,
onions,
arugula,
jalapenos, arugula.
onions,
What else do the kids just love? And cucumbers, like for pickles, cucumbers.
cucumbers.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
That's interesting. Have you ever thought about just doing that?
No,
Just
because
growing those?
there's other things that I like to do, but like those are the ones we eat the most of and that get the most play.
You can
I
probably grow arugula all through the summer too.
Yes. Yeah, if I remember to like session.
Mhm.
Oh, for sure. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like tomatoes. I like growing them. I love, I find it very pleasurable to give my family tomatoes because I think most of them, I think there's a kid that doesn't like them in this with the same passion that I dislike a tomato, but everyone else, they make them so happy. So I love growing them. But so I wouldn't put that on my list though. I'd selfishly take my beets because I love pickled beets.
That's okay. You're allowed to be selfish. I addressed this in my cooking community the other day, so I'm going to address it here too. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how you do this.
Okay.
When I sow arugula
Mhm.
or cilantro or spinach primarily in my garden, I will dig a little trench, just like an inch down,
Mhm.
but it's like 12 inches wide. And it could be 3 feet, 4 feet, 6 feet, however
Mhm.
long. Okay. And then I will like also 1,000 seeds,
Mhm.
like a carpet. I plant it like a carpet. I don't plant plants. So somebody was saying, I can't grow cilantro at home. Like it doesn't get big, it doesn't get bushy. And I had to explain to her, no, cilantro grows like it is a stem. It's a stem and it has some leaves
Mhm.
offshooting. And yes, but like you need to plant 500 stems. Then you have a cilantro hedge.
Yeah.
And then you can go in and cut off the big bunches. And I do the
Yeah.
same with arugula. I literally sew it like a carpet. I go out there with a knife and a basket and I just like cut it off at the soil
Yeah. I
line.
do. Yeah. I do like 8-inch, 10-inch trenches.
Yeah, like a trench. Yeah,
And it's almost like you're
exactly.
planting microgreens. It's almost like the same way you would
Yes.
approach a microgreen. Yeah.
Yes.
Or just about the same.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. And there's some really cool lettuce mixes that you can do this with too, where instead of sewing all the heads, transplanting each one, you can
Mhm.
literally just clear off an 8 or 10 inch wide strip, broadcast all of the lettuce seeds, and they grow like a bigger microgreen. Like you would just let it get
Right.
true leaves and then cut it off. It's like a mixed salad blend.
Mhm.
It works really well. It's a really great way to grow greens.
Yeah. I just
And
take
then a
like
lot of
a
them they grow back
scissors out. Oh,
from
yeah,
the
for
root.
sure.
Yeah.
You know, I have like a
Yeah.
garden scissors or big long knife if I'm going to like go across the top. And yeah.
Yeah. My crops, since you
Okay.
asked, are going to be
Didn't even get a chance, woman. Okay. What are the 5 crops you would grow if you were stranded on a
Thank you.
desert island, Shay?
Well, since you asked, potatoes,
Mhm.
potatoes, tomatoes, greens. I'm just going to be broad. It could be any green.
I think green. Okay. All right.
Collard greens, mustard
Mhm.
greens, kale, arugula, potatoes, tomatoes, greens of some kind, onion,
Mhm.
big time. I have an onion, dare I say, fetish. It's
I
getting out of hand. I think I planted like 8 varieties so far.
Sweet.
It's a real problem. When you plant your onions, do you cluster plant them in the cell trays? How do you do yours?
No, I don't like that. It did not work for me. I
I
tried it
don't
2
like that.
years and I tried it 2 years
Oh,
in a row and I just did it because I was reading the books and watching and everything. And I just thought like it wasn't broke. Just leave it alone. You were doing just fine.
it saves me so much time. It saves me so much time. You didn't,
They
did
didn't
they
grow
not
well.
grow? What
No,
was
they
the
didn't grow
problem?
well. No, they didn't grow well. Yeah, that was
Huh,
what the problem was. The
never
problem
had that
wasn't like
problem.
the tray aspect or you know the cell. It was that they just in fact last year I got so frustrated at one point I like dove in and like took them apart and then spaced them out.
Wow.
Yeah, because they were not growing and then that did the trick. It's weird.
So what we're talking about, listeners, is that I do a method of sowing onion seeds where you have your cell tray, right? It's your planting tray that's broken up into little compartments. And I will put 5 or 6 onion seeds in each compartment. I'll let them grow. And then when it's time to transplant them out into the garden, I'll just take the whole plug, all 5 or 6 grown together, and transplant that into the garden. And then as they grow, they just sort of push each other out of the way. They grow outwards, right? From like the nucleus
Hmm.
from the middle, they just kind of grow out. But you're saying that doesn't work for you. I've never
It
had
didn't
size be a problem.
it didn't work for me.
That's
It was
weird.
no problem with
No,
beets, but I did not have success
no.
with onions.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Goes to show
I
you.
I
Just never did.
Yeah, I love planting onions. It's like so fun when you, I mean, I remember like ages ago planting onions for the first time. Because when you're a noob, you just think of like cucumbers but when you try
Yeah.
something that's so like something from nothing, you know, that you're just planting a seed. I started with like when I first started growing vegetables, I started with the little sets. And then I remember the year I tried seed for the first time. There's something weird in my mind, growing onions is like the same level of like the first time I roasted a chicken.
Yeah.
It was that important to me. So I have like a real soft spot for growing onions.
Yep.
I get really dramatic if they don't come out
Plus,
the way I wanted to. Like I'm pretty proud of my onions. Love them hanging from
yeah.
the rafters. It just brings me so much pleasure to have crap hanging from my ceiling at the end of the summer.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking. There's not many crops like onions where you can enjoy them in the summertime, but also they're really easy to store. You just
Mhm.
can throw up a little braid of them in your kitchen and you
Right.
get to look at them all winter long and use them as a storage crop, even if you're not set up in any major capacity for food
Mhm.
storage. There's not
Yeah.
that many crops like that give you that kind of pleasure, which is why it's essential that you grow storage onions, both yellow and white and
Yeah.
purple, and sweet onions for summer consumption and to use in your pickles like Walla Walla, and
Mhm.
also green onions and purple green onions, the fresh eating spring onions,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And then you should also grow, what is it, the tropea onions, the long
The
elongated
long.
purple Italian ones that you can roast under salt that are so
Mm.
sweet. You gotta have them all.
Gotta have them all.
Blush onion.
I remember like the first, like when I first learned to braid them, there was, again, it's just, I think it's nostalgically connected to that whole like roasted chicken period of time in my life. I remember having the braid by the range, which I didn't know better, as far as sprouting earlier from the warmth or whatever. But I had a little bouquet of thyme from my tiny, tiny herb garden, and it hung on a nail. And I remember just the joy of grabbing an onion, and then I'd grab that thyme and I'd go like this over whatever I was making, and it would
Yeah.
just like crumble in the
Yeah.
dust and
Yeah.
whatever. But it's
I
all
know.
very nostalgic. There's a bit about the vegetables that's nostalgic to me because I was a flower gardener for long before I was a vegetable gardener. So,
Yeah. That's what I wish. I wish I could bottle that feeling and give it to people
mhm.
who aren't gardeners. That I don't even know what the right word is to describe that feeling. But I know exactly what you're talking about having a period of your life that you're just particularly nostalgic about. Like it's one of those transformational periods where you think, this is who I was meant to be.
Mhm.
This is what I was made for. And I remember very distinctly that period of my life. And man, what are the words that you would even use for that? I wish I could give that to people.
Right. I think it also, like for me, like if I look at cookbooks, for example, that I was really interested in during that period of time, they're so basic and they're really heavily worded. There's stories and anecdotes to go with each
Mm.
recipe. And you could tell like I was just in and I was feeling it, but so when I do that, it actually allows me to have, it's easy for us to do all this work, pleasurable or not, and like lose perspective. We talk a lot on the show about growth because that's what we are trying to do. If we're going to refine the art, obviously an artist gets better at their art.
Right.
So for example, when I go back and look at old cookbooks or I remember that feeling of grabbing an onion that was braided next to the stove, it gives me perspective and I can actually have the enjoyment of looking back and going, you've really grown. Look at
Yeah.
all you've learned how to do. Look at all you've Googled and trial and errored your face off. Like look how much you've
Yeah.
grown in this area. That's really cool. And it is sort of like trial and error hobbies and pastimes or whatever like gardening that allow you that. So the payoff is not just the perfect tomato. The payoff is your kids learning discipline and hard work. The payoff is you learning a new skill. The payoff is you having to up your organization or your time management so that you can take on the extra work during the summer. The payoff is so multifaceted.
Yeah. Yes and amen, ladies.
Yes,
I think that's a good
amen.
way to round out our garden episode. So
Okay.
thank you for being with us here today. If you have questions, comments, make sure you message us over on Instagram. We can't get to everyone, but we do love to see what you say. It gives us ideas for future topics, for questions that we need to address on the show, answer on the show. So we'd love to hear from you over there. Give us a follow. Share the show with a gardener in your life, with a sister or a friend who you think might enjoy it. That really helps the show, and we appreciate it very much. So
Very much. We have
let us know what you're growing in your garden.
2 more episodes to mind the gap. Correct?
Oy,
Yeah, this is
what
episode
is
8.
happening with life?
I don't know. I don't
What is
know.
happening?
It's like warp speed. Yeah, this is
Oh,
this is
man.
episode 8. So we have 9 and 10.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, all right, ladies. We'll be
Great
back here
week.
with you next Monday. Thanks for being here. We'll see you soon. Cheers.
Cheers.